Good afternoon, evening, members of Beulah Baptist Church. I come to present our Wednesday Bible study to you, and I'm excited to do this as always. And so if you would, please get your Bibles ready to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. While you're doing that, we'll go ahead and open up in prayer. I've noticed I've been consistently sticking to about an hour on Wednesday afternoons, evenings. I'm going to try to shorten this one up a little bit, make it a little more streamlined, so bear with me as my long-wittedness, I try to rein it in a little bit. But anyway, I digress. As you're getting your Bibles ready and opening up to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, I thought it'd be kind of funny to read something to you. These little, I don't know what you want to call them, just funny statements, I guess, is the best way I can surmise it. It says this: knowledge is knowing tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. And for whatever reason, when I read that last night, it just struck me very funny, because we live in a world that seems to just be absentee of wisdom. You kind of look back and you go, what has happened to the world? And with that being said, I want that to dovetail into our message this evening. Our life is very open and new in many ways, because we have the ability now to have instantaneous news and social media and all of these different things that bring the evil and the bad and the wicked and the nasty and even the funny and lighthearted into our homes and into our lives at rapid speed. I mean, in a moment, you can log into your local social media account and see everything under the sun. Anything you want to see, you want to find. In the internet, it kind of is interesting how the internet is handling different situations and problems. For example, suddenly child pornography and other things of that nature are all at the forefront with all the different news stories and headlines. And I wasn't planning on mentioning it, but I keep this in my desk. I pull it out every now and then and I look at it, and it's a letter written, and it was a newsletter written in 1977. And it says there's 3 battlefronts which you should have your immediate attention. The battle against child pornography, number 1. The battle against communism, number 2. And the battle against public apathy, number 3. And as I look at that list right now, I'm thinking, wow, this was written before I was even born. And this man was right. We got far more battles. But a lot of those battles are being lost because we've forgotten a key component of our walk with God. It's a 4-letter word. And that is the title of my message this evening. The 4-letter word. Let's pray. Our Father, I thank you for giving me another day and another opportunity to preach, to teach, to be a blessing to those that will hear me. Lord, I beg you, in a vastly, rapidly changing world, help us to stand firm, to be faithful, to focus, and to be wise in what we're doing, and to be ready to face whatever tomorrow brings, to be unashamed about our thoughts and our hopes and our dreams, especially when they dovetail into you. Because all of those hopes and dreams, they all come to your teachings and your principles. And I don't need to be ashamed of that. The world may shame me, the world may hate me. That's okay. Lord, I want to love you. I want to hold fast to you, no matter what the world does. And so, Lord, I ask that you please bless this message. Make it a blessing to those that hear it. Give me guidance and wisdom in all that I say and preach this afternoon. In your Son's holy name we ask and we pray. Amen. All right, so you should have your Bibles now open to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And here's where we're going to start. We're going to read verses 4 through verses 8. 4 through 8. Charity suffereth long, and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself. It is not puffed up. Doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. Charity never faileth. But whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away. But now I want you to go on down to 13, verse 13. And now abideth faith, hope, charity. These three. But the greatest of these is charity. Now the English language, it is filled to the brim with four-letter words. And when I say that to you, some of you, the first thought you may have is, because you remember your mom or your dad, you slip of the tongue and say something, and you know it's a bad word, and they unleash, you said that four-letter bad word. But there's lots of four-letter words that we deal with. For example, some are very exciting. Some of you, if I said the word cake, that's going to bring you a little bit of excitement. Oh, because you love cake. You love cake, and then you add on the ice cream and all the little additives and the extras and the whipped cream and the cherries and all that good stuff. Cake can be an exciting event. If you don't believe that, just look at a 2-year-old during the birthday party. Now, maybe you don't like cake. What about chip? Now, yes, I took the S off for sake of 4 letters, but chips. Do you like Doritos, Cheetos, whatever your favorite chip is? Nacho cheese and ranch, and there's even a Baconator flavor now, or whatever it is that I saw on the Wendy's shelves, or the store shelves. It's amazing what a chip can do. It can make you very excited. It can make you very happy. What about cash? Oh yeah, cash can make people very excited. It can change their whole day. It can move and motivate in ways that we could never imagine. But then you also have some 4-letter words that are very frightening. How about fear? Pain? What about dead? That's a frightening 4-letter word for a lot of people. What about diet? Now that's even worse, isn't it? Because then goes the cake, and then goes the chips, and then goes the fast food, and then goes all of those other things. Diet. Bringing things into reign when it comes to your health. And then, of course, cash. Cash can be exciting when you have it, not so exciting when you don't. But 4-letter words can also be very emotionally moving, many times in a very negative way. Think about the word rage. What does rage do? Well, if you look around you, it makes people act and behave in insane manners. What about harm? We don't like that one. That brings us some sorrow to the heart, doesn't it? What about hate? We hear that word thrown around a lot today. A lot. And most of the time it's with no opinion, no thought. We just say people hate because, love is hate, or what. I don't even know all the euphemisms now that they use, but if you have an opinion that doesn't agree with them, well, then you're just a hater. That's the basic premise of it all. And then, of course, dare. Lots of kids know that word. If you watched an old Christmas movie, you know that word very well. A dare can move a child to do some very stupid and bad things because it's an emotional charge. I dare you. You dare me? Me? I am so good and so great and so wonderful. You dare me? So it moves us. But then there's also 4-letter words that move us to great and good feelings, like gift. Think about your spouse, your loved one coming home from a sea far away, and all of a sudden they show up with a beautiful gift. Something you've never seen before because you've not been there. Isn't that amazing? Or what about something that's rare? In the news recently, the blue lobster that was so rare. See, those things can be emotionally moving as well. How about shop? So I said cash can be an exciting thing. Cash can be a frightening thing. But cash, when it comes to shopping, can make us feel good or bad. Again, it all comes to whether you have it or you don't. Now that's an interesting thought. You either have it or you don't. And love, that huge, immense four-letter word. You either have it or you don't. Now, being that love is the word that we're dealing with, it is interesting to notice that all those attributes I just gave this word, exciting, frightening, and emotionally moving, both bad and good, all fall right in line with the word love. Because you see, love can be an exciting thing. Think back on your first date with the love of your life, or the birth of your child. That love. You name it. Name anything that has brought great love to you. That can be super exciting. It can be one of the greatest things you've ever experienced in your life. If you're saved, think about the moment you repented and got your life right with God, and God saved your soul, and you realized it, and you knew what debt and what depth His love went to. The debt you cannot pay and the depth you cannot swim. But His love went there for you. But it can also be very frightening. Think about it when you got married, or you bought a dog, or whatever, the life change that comes when love moves in. And think about how your life changed when the power of God moved into your heart. The things you thought were so fun and so exciting and so wonderful in the past suddenly don't mean anything. And the things that you used to deride and hate and thought nothing of, suddenly, they're so much more powerful. We have a world today that's burning Bibles and shutting down churches, and yet this same world is so full of ignorance, hate, and rage. They don't see the damage that they're doing. Not just in this generation, but for generations to come. Love, I believe personally, is the most immense, deep, and impactful, powerful emotion that God gave us. I think an argument could be made for a lot of emotions, but love. When you look at 1 Corinthians 13:13, and now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three, but the greatest of these is charity. You see, love does something in all of us. Love changes us. Love makes us do things and feel things and expect things that we would have never done otherwise. Love can make the worst enemy become your best friend. Love will also make you challenge your best friend to be a better person, to be more compassionate, more caring. Love is, like I said to someone this week, sometimes love is the person that doesn't say what you want to hear to make you feel better, but is the one that will rip the Band-Aid off to expose the wound to get it some help. Love does some amazing things. It really does. But you see, some people say, no, anger's the most powerful emotion. Well, the Bible tells us that anger resteth in the bosom of fools, so anger is foolish. Look back at your life and look at all the times you were angry and rage-filled and bitter, and how you looked, how you acted, the decisions you made, the consequences of the life that you led. They will ruin you. So anger is foolishness, and it eventually will subside away. It does. Anger passes. You notice that love doesn't. If there's been someone in your past that you truly deeply love, say someone you were courting or dating, what have you, and that courtship or dating ends, but you really did love them, you've gotten married, you've moved on, all those other things, the love that you felt for that person still exists. It still lingers on. You don't love them the same way, but it's still there. You can love the person that hates your guts for the rest of your life, because it was real. It changed you. But then what about fear? Well, the Bible tells us that God didn't give us that spirit. I've said that much these past few months as we're dealing with a lot of fear in Christianity. But also, it passes away too. You eventually grow out of those childish... let's go ahead and read it because it's right there. 1 Corinthians 13:11, when I was a child, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. You know, when you're 10 years old and the shadows in your room are monsters and octopuses and Loch Ness monsters and whatever else, as you get to be 15 and 16, if you still believe that, we need to have you talk to someone. But chances are you're not. You've grown. You've gone beyond that initial fear because you realize that fear isn't real. It's what we imagine things to be. Are you genuinely afraid? Sure. But what are you generally afraid of? The things that haven't happened? Because 99% of the time, you're scared of what may or may not happen, and then when it does happen, it's really not as bad as you thought it was. Then think about diets. Much like anger and fear, a diet can go out the window. And the reason I use the word diet, why do we bring in diets? No, I look at myself in the mirror and I got a bit of an extra chin here and I got to tune that up and get that fixed. Oh man, my abs aren't looking like they used to and I've gained 10 pounds and blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to stock my fridge with all of these foods I've never eaten before, don't really like the taste of because they're going to make me healthy. And in 6 months, nothing's changed. You see, diet is something that's a temporary good. It's something that's fleeting because nothing inside of you actually changed. Your direction did not actually change. Now, I'm grateful for anyone that's able to get on a diet, stick to it, lose weight, and get healthy. But if something doesn't change in how you're living, it'll come, it'll be powerful for a little bit, and then it'll pass. Trust me, I know. But love. Love is that thing that when we think about it, whether it makes us move with butterflies to those that we love, or whether it makes us hold on to those that hate us, because we know the consequences in their life. It makes us move. It changes everything. Now, the big word that everybody likes to use, in especially out there in the world, is that God is love. God is love, God is love, God is love. Yes, that's true. And God provides us the emotional love. But with God, it's so much deeper. Because see, when you say God is love and that's all you want to cite on, you lose the aspect of what godly love is. Because in that God is love mentality, you can't have discipline, you can't have judgment, you can't have consequences, you can't have right and wrong. It's just a blanket statement of love. You see, you've missed the entire point. And I agree with some of the older men that have been in my life where they've been in church all their life and they say, look, you know, legalism can go too far, but this love aspect can go way too far also. Absolutely, I 100% agree. But today I want to ask you, how is your love? Is it enduring? Is it holding fast? Is it the kind of love that God would expect you to have? And that's, I think, where many of us, these past few years, decades, and I guess even probably for the country, a century, love turned into lust, pride and ego, and God was thrown away. They said, no, 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 we can't have, we want this kind of love. And this kind of love, God says, no, we should not have that kind of love, because it's not real, genuine, true, honest love. It's just love of the flesh. And it's only going to go so deep, much like your diet, and it's going to fall away. And there's bad things that come with that. That's why when he says, love me first, look to me first, it's not a fleeting, fake, okay, we're going to do it today because we've got a consequence coming our way and we don't want to be punished too hard. So we're going to grab onto God for a little bit and ask for forgiveness and hope it all goes away. But no, 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 it's that deep, life-changing effect. And so when you look back through all the centuries and all the histories, and you see how dance phrases and fads and popularity and those things, they come and they go so rapidly, and so does the world's love. So how is your love? Is it the world's love? Is it so fleeting and so fast that the moment someone doesn't step right in line with what you think they should be, or should be doing the way you think it should, that you don't love them anymore, you'll throw them away? Or is it the kind of God's love? The love that he established, the love that he gives us these following principles on. And so that leads me to my first point in this message. We failed to teach. Mankind at this moment, I believe, across the vast spectrum, has lost, one, the ability to love. And you say, well, wait a minute, God, but no, give me a minute. They've lost the ability to love, but they've also lost the will. I don't want to. See, everyone has the ability. But remember, I'm defining 2 points of love: God's and the world's. Anybody can love in the ability of the world. That's, like I said, it's lust. Xbox, materialism, go down the list. I think of my son, and I asked him the other day, I said, son, you like the Xbox, I understand it, but why is that all that you focus on? We need to work on that. And so my son yesterday, he wanted to have a daddy Sunday, and I love those things. I love them. And his idea was to have us play video games. And to a certain extent, I get it. But I said, no, we're going to go out in the garage. And so yesterday, I've had this desire to just build a paper towel holder. I didn't need it. But in the garage, I don't have anywhere to put my paper towels, and I had some spare wood, and I thought, I'll throw a paper towel holder together. But I grabbed my son. I took him out there. And oh man, he didn't want to. He wanted to sit and play video games. He wanted to do all those things. And I said, dear boy, you need to understand. I've been given a job to do. I'm to teach you. I'm to lead you. I'm to be not just your friend. That's great if I can be your friend, but first I'm your father. And in that, I need to set you in a direction that's going to be beneficial for the rest of your life. I said, so that's why you're out here today. And so I made him help me measure. I showed him how to cut with the saw. I showed him how to drill the holes for the paper towel roll. I had him help me screw in the L brackets. Now he was bored. He didn't have a whole lot of fun with it. I said, son, you need to understand this to me. This is good quality love time. Because I can grab my son's hand. I can put it on that drill and guide him, teaching him how to build. Because remember, we are given 2 paths. We can either build people or we can tear them down. And I want him to know how to use his hands for good. Pressing buttons all day is fine for a 10-year-old. I get it, in a sense. But there comes a point where you got to put away those childish things. And so when we finally finished up, I mean, my heart was just full, because we don't get to do that often. I know I'm busy, so I try to carve out and make sure that I spend my time the best I can. But time is something we don't get back. So I wanted him to know in that little bit of time we have that his daddy loves him and wants to teach him and lead him. And after we were done building, He had a big old smile across his face and a sense of accomplishment. He gained an ability. In order for the world to have the ability to truly love, they got to get back with God. And because parents and grandparents and generations have failed to teach godly love in many different ways, we now see what's going on outside in our world. These young teens who run around thinking everything is theirs, they own it all. How dare you take from me? It's mine and I deserve it. I make demands and they shall be met. So, as I said, this point is failures of teaching. We have failed to teach the ability to love. See, I could have sat down with my little boy and played video games for hours. But what would I have accomplished? Would I have been able to hold his hand while he held that drill? Would I have been able to give him ideas and talk him through the process of building something? Would I have been able to be a part of something that he created and us together? And if he's anything like me, if let's say something happens to me, he'll look at that and remember, I built that with Dad. I still have the toolbox that I built it. I think I was 13 years old, built it by myself. It was nothing more than a box and a bunch of spare wood that I nailed together. And I made that for my dad for Father's Day, I believe it was. And he kept it. It's ugly as sin. It's horrible. But he kept it. And now I have it. And one day my son will do the same. Because I'm desiring to teach him the way he should be taught, to lead him the way he should be led, and to do that with the love that God has taught me to love with. But here's what the world does, and here's how they mess up. Because they have failed to teach, they've now got new ideas. Ad campaigns that say love has no labels. Well, actually, you're lying entirely, because love absolutely does have a label. And you in your own ad define it. So you're so busy trying to demean people when they have an opinion on what love is, and you're trying to shut them down and trying to make a mockery of them, you have yourself made a mockery of your own argument. Now, I could get into a long diatribe about that. It's not worth the time in this message. What I will say is this: the world wants love without love. They want the flesh. They want the excitement, and they want all the great things, but it's like someone who gets married. They want the good without the bad. They want the health without the sickness. They want the times of good joy without the times of sorrow. And so when we look back and we say, how did we get here? How did we lose 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8, and then 13? Well, we've made up some messed up children. We have. Outside of God, I ask this question: where can we find love? And I see it all day long. Christians who they love their memes, they love their posts, they love all their feel-good stuff, but yet think the world's love is the same. And when you look at what we see with the world's love, what do we see? We see divorces. They're skyrocketing. We see single parent homes. And hey, look, I understand everybody's situation is different. But when you have TV shows that celebrate and make it look like it's the greatest thing in the world, single parent homes. I've met with some single parents who wish they had not had that situation. And they're doing everything they can to remedy the problems that brought on. Things happen. I understand. But why glorify something that can hurt so much? And now you have, because no one sat back and said, wait a minute, a mom who has to work or a dad who has to work and can't be with that child all the time, how are they going to teach them the love and the compassion without God's grace? Let's be clear, I'm speaking of the world here. How can they possibly get them to see the world in a good way, in a spiritual way, in a light that's different? Because here, the parent can't be the parent anymore because they've got to pass their children off to all of these other people who are going to then raise the children. And then when the children get old enough and they disavow the parents and say, no, thank you, Mom, I don't agree with you. No, thank you, Dad, you're a fool, okay, boomer, and all the other nonsense that gets thrown around. What are they going to do? They go back and say, well, what happened? Now, I've seen situations where a parent, a single parent, adopted a child for the grace of that child, and that parent did everything up and above. So I'm not going to do what the celebrities and others like to do and levy blanket statements. Every situation is different, but I'll say this: I had a mother that had to be a single parent for a while. She fought hard, and it was tough. But when we've got a system and a society that's telling 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds it's okay, I go out there and have babies to your whim's delight. I've got the interviews. I've seen them. You can look them up. Take your time if you've got the stomach for it. Oh, yeah. Babies raising babies. It's great. And then we go back and we wonder, why? The consequences may not be seen for 15 or 20 years. And because of that, the divorces, the single parents, the breakdown of the entirety of the home. And I slipped this, I missed this, I was going to say it. We've got situations now where people are willfully going out and saying, hey, let's meet on a website, we'll adopt a child together. We don't want to be parents together, we just want to be a parent. So we'll separate this child. Where's the love? Where's the compassion? Where's the training? Where's the agreement? Where's the unity under one head? The Father. Well, obviously, if you're lost and you don't care, you're not going to have that unity to begin with. So you're not going to care what God says. But just in a simple sense of the well-being of that child. Okay, well, we're going to make this guy daddy. He doesn't want to be a daddy. He just wants, or doesn't want to be a father. He just wants to be a daddy. He wants to have a baby. But we're not actually together. We don't live in the same home. We don't share the same philosophy. We don't share the same ideology and worldview. And he may fly off one day. Attachment issues, maybe. But because we've said no labels, no this, no that, love can be whatever it wants, that child is going to be the one that pays the price. I thank God for every loving family that's willing to adopt a child. I've met many a mother who did not have children, was not married, and desperately wanted to be a mom. So she adopted a child in need and took the best care of it. I've seen some of the greatest kids come out of that situation. But now when you're sitting here and you're saying, we just want to share a child, what? Are you kidding me? What has happened to your brain? That is a life that needs leadership. Well, don't judge me. Don't tell me I'm wrong, because this is what I want. Okay. So because they were never taught, they were never taught from their youth up God's way of love. That's part of the reason why we see such an issue with teen pregnancy today. They've never been taught love, what real, true love is. They've never been really inoculated with reality. And so they look at TV and celebrities, and that's who's their leader. Oh, because it happened on TV, it must be okay. I saw it on Thursday night on a primetime channel. So how did we get such mixed up kids? Excuse me. I got this little sheet out of one of my counseling training manuals, and it just says copied, so I can't give credit, unfortunately, to whoever came up with it, but I really liked it. It said, add a little hot air. So as you start off with this child, you add a little hot air, just useless stories that don't teach them anything. You're just filling their heads with nonsense. Then you stir in some sarcasm. Constantly berate that child. Teach them how they're stupid, they're idiots, they're whatever. And you see that all the time now. You see parents talking to their children like they're dumb, and so now when the children are old enough, they do the same to the parents. Kind of convenient, isn't it? Then you fill with bad examples. Show them. Show them how you live. Be honest with them. Stop hiding the things in the dark. Got moronic parents playing pornography for their children because they're going to do it anyway. What is the matter with you? Season with indifference. I like the point that this person makes. I don't care what you do so long as you don't bother me attitude. I don't care what you're doing right now. It doesn't bother me. See, I could have used that with my kid yesterday. I could have said, I don't care what we do. No, I want an impact. I do care what we do. Sift in some indecision. You know, life is filled with hard choices. Sometimes they're made on the fly, sometimes they're long term. But if you can't be decisive, I don't know. How can your child ever be? Add a dash of alcohol and toss in a few pills. Teaching them the idea of sin doesn't matter. And there's no consequence for our decisions. Other people may pay consequences, but there's none for us. And the other point that this person makes when they give this direction is that bringing in those addicted traits and then allowing for the idea that in life nobody suffers and there are no problems because there's a pill, a drink, or a tablet, or a capsule for every disappointment, failure, or discomfort. I thought that was interesting. Let simmer until it's ready to boil. Ignore the symptoms of your child's problems. Don't deal with them. Don't face them. Just put them in the little corner and tell everybody it's okay. Don't worry about what's happening in their life because eventually it'll just go away. No, we've learned that's not true, haven't we? Never discipline. Because if you discipline, you're just going to break their spirit and they just won't be the free-thinking, free-flying, tree-hugging, bird-loving, whatever the list you want to add to it person. Because discipline ruins a child, as one said. Then it says this as the finishing making of a bad child. Bake in the heat of your own temper. Constantly be yelling at them. That'll really work. Constantly be berating them. Constantly showing them your temper. Because remember what I said in my introduction, anger resteth in the bosom of fools. Show them your foolishness. Because what you do, your child will mimic. What you do, your child will do in excess. And lastly, for the formulation of a mixed up bad kid, omit God. Take God out of it. And that's what scares me about this COVID and all these other things with churches and different situations I'm constantly reading throughout the week. I'm preaching this Sunday on some spirituality issues. We have a spiritual famine in this land. I truly believe that. Whether it's led by pastors who are not doing their job or broken hearts that can't see the hope of Christ or whatever. I don't know what's exactly leading it. But there are some things that we need to abandon to have a good spiritual walk. So I hope you join me with that message on Sunday morning. We hear psychologists all the time, abandonment issues, attachment issues. Well, you know, in life sometimes there's things you need to abandon, but the one you should not is God's love. And when you sit here and you remove God, all those other things I just listed out are inevitable. Yeah, you may not drink and you may not take pills, but what are you giving your child into addiction to? TV? Overeating? Laziness? I mean, we could sit and come up with 1,000 things and I'm guilty of this. I've made conscious efforts as I've watched my child, especially through COVID. Okay, I've got to stop that. I can't do that anymore. I've got to change this. And I'm still working on it. And I'll work on it till the day that my child moves out of here and then proceeding beyond that. Because training a child never stops. You never stop being a parent. And you never stop loving. But because of this failure to teach, to show genuine godly love, it's disappearing. It is falling to the wayside. When you have people willfully beating each other up in the streets because of an opinion, a thought, an idea, a sign, whatever. I sat and watched someone videotaping themselves that they went to a car, and this car had a Christian bumper sticker on it. And so this person went and bought all these anti-God and pro-social issue stickers and covered their back of the car in those stickers. And I thought to myself, there is something broken in you when you're willing to do that. That you're going to that extent. Couldn't you just talk to them, wait for them to get back to the car and ask them what their thoughts and feelings are? You didn't take time to do that because you've never understood what love is. The second greatest commandment is to love thy neighbor as thyself. The story of the Good Samaritan. Who is my neighbor? The cockiness of that question. I have lived, as your pastor and as your friend, I live to my best abilities to consider and treat everyone as my neighbor. I don't care if they've wronged me. I don't care if they've hurt me. I don't care if they've lied to me and manipulated me. I don't care what wounding they've done, because God can heal all wounds. But we didn't get caveats on this. Love but, love but. And I've listened to people go to the Bible and they'll cherry pick a verse here and cherry pick a verse there and bash people over their heads and say, well, I can't love them because look at what they said. Well, give me 10 minutes with your life and let's find out what I can do. That's not how we're supposed to be. That's not how we're supposed to treat each other. So my question is now, I can look out there and find no label love. I can look out there and find love with any means necessary. You now have groups going out there and telling the world that their orientations or they're this or they're that or whatever is A-okay, regardless of what it is. You give an inch, a mile must be sacrificed. So no matter what their thought is, no matter what their feeling is, because you say this is right and that's right and this is okay and that's okay. You got people marrying themselves and marrying train stations, and one person married their dog. Look, I love my dog. But no. Because you've left a godly principle of love, you can never understand. I believe. You can never understand what God means in these verses. So now my question to you is, can you find God's love? Point number 2. Because of this failure to teach and to lead, we can spend a great time trying to justify our views on love. And that's what the world does. They'll justify anything because they want to be right. Because they feel it. It is a feeling. But they've got to be right no matter what it is. And God instilled in us a moral compass to tell us what is right and what is wrong. He did. And that's why you see some of the craziness you see going on right now. There is still a moral compass saying, no, I may be a little bit loose over here, but this is wrong. The idea of love is my way or the highway cannot stand anymore. It can't. The truth must be said in a loving and kind way. God does have standards and expectations of proper love. Now, I do believe out there in the world, people will disagree with some of the things I've said, and they love with all their heart. I do believe that. But can you find yourself in these few verses? That's my challenge to you this afternoon. So the only way that we can see true love is to look to the Scriptures. Lest we find ourselves erring because we don't know them. And so when we cannot expect people to see or learn of God's love when we don't live it and show it. There's a lot of Christians right now that are throwing away all of their Christianity for fear of a virus. They're throwing away all of their Christianity for fear of being hated or hurting someone's feelings. They're willing to give up on God at the slightest moment. How can the world understand and know God's love when you're ready to throw it away at the drop of a hat? What the world sees in most Christians today is ego, pride, anger, foolishness. And sometimes they've got it. They've got it right. There's a man at a grocery store this recently, and I haven't been able to see the video myself yet, but the video audio, as I have heard, has these two people wearing masks screaming at someone who is not wearing a mask. Screaming at him. And the man's mask said either God's got this, I think it said God's got this, or faith over fear. I can't remember which story I read, but I believe it was God's got this. This same man, looking at someone that's not wearing a mask, said, I hope you die. Now, I want you to put yourself in the person's shoes. It's not the person not wearing a mask and not the person wearing the mask, but someone just standing there watching. Lots of people put Bible verses on their Facebook pages at the same time they're calling everyone racist and hate mongers. Many people love to share the posts about their favorite preacher, but at the same time criticizing anyone who disagrees with the position they hold, calling them stupid and arrogant and foolish, and even throwing out those bad four-letter words. So when someone's watching, how are they ever going to know what the love of Christ is if they can't even see the love of God in you? What they see is foolishness. And as 1 Corinthians 13:11, childishness. And I thought that was an interesting statement. There was a situation in a moment in time where I was with some youth that had some trouble going on in their life, and I asked them to write about it. And it was trouble within their church, and this young lady, sorry, the lid on my water just broke. This young lady was writing, trying to express to me why she was feeling the way she was feeling about what she watched. It was a horrible situation. She starts off with her letter with asking this question: why did God do this? And how could he let this happen? She continues on and she writes in there, she writes this: well, if you're not serving God the way you should, then what makes you think you deserve the best of every situation? Like, why blame someone else when you're the one to blame? But as she goes through this list of things, she's struggling in her faith at this moment. She's struggling in her love and walk with God. And here's how she begins to close out her letter to me. When this place went through its problems, all the adults accused people of doing things they should not have done. I looked at them like they were stupid. This is from a youth talking about Christians and the way they were behaving. The fact that they claim themselves as Christians yet handled the situation so childishly and low-key doesn't know, I'm not exactly sure what she was trying to say, but basically says this, doesn't know as much about the Bible as these other people that they made these accusations about. And it said this, as she finishes us off. You look like fools. Because there was no love in their actions. No godly love. No charity whatsoever. This young youth who was looking for God, looking for direction, seeking out His will and compassion in his life because of how people handled themselves. What happened to her faith? What happened to her desire for God? Now you take that same situation and go out there to someone who's not in church and not around Christians, and this is the big example they get. So when can we teach if we don't understand? And if we don't live it and apply it? We can't expect them. Remember, we're dealing with a generation of mixed up kids now. Everybody gets a trophy. There's never any bad. Everybody feels great. And your favorite celebrity is the wisest person that ever was put on the face of this planet. Is that why these celebrities who love to tweet had to go out and block their pages and delete all these tweets because of things they said that were just a little bit unsavory? That might put them in a bit of legal trouble. They're the great influencers. Some kid in Nevada or in Utah or whatever is the kid that's influencing your child through Facebook and YouTube and whatever. Because we're dealing with mixed up kids that became mixed up adults, they will constantly look for the negative in everything. They'll look for the harm, the hurt, the fear. They'll look for that. They won't look for love, hope. And so now I want to give you, out of the verses that we have read, we're going to break them down. I want to show you the attributes of genuine godly love. Let's go. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 4. Charity suffereth long. Charity suffereth long. Your love, when it's genuine, it's patient. You'll be patient with people that don't agree with you. You'll be patient with people that don't always live up to the standards you set. You will be patient with your children, with your family, with your spouse, with anybody. And so your love hinders a lot of things that are what we would call irritations. Anger won't be so easily reflected out of you because it'll be hindered by the love and charity that's within you. Your quick temper will be smacked down because of love. It will suffer strife, tribulation, problems, disagreements, judgments. It will suffer long. It will hold fast among many icebergs. The ship won't sink. Because when it's genuine, that love trumps that anger any day. Verse 4. And is kind. How often are you kind to someone? And I don't mean just helping hands here and there, but I mean genuinely, truly kind. We can all hand over a meal at some point or stop and jump a car. That's easy stuff. But how about holding their hand when they're really broken? How about building them up rather than tearing them down? But your love, it's constructive, not destructive. The explosion yesterday across our globe, my heart breaks for that. But there's been a picture now of a before and after, what that area looked like, and it's devastating. When love is missing and anger and rage abide, it's a devastating change. You will leave craters in your wake. But kind, being constructive, you are trying to simply improve or contributing to that person's life. And if their love is genuine, when you fall short, it suffers long. You both get past it together. The next part, charity envieth not. Envy it's as evil as it gets. I think sometimes envy will lead you to do things that you would have never otherwise done. And what do we envy? We envy possessions, we envy time, we envy job, we envy banking. All the things of this world is what we envy. I don't envy this world. I want no part of it anymore. I'm ready for my heavenly home. But I'm here now. And so when we consider envy, your love is not possessive. Love, when it's genuine, you're not trying to possess things. Remember the commandment that you're not going to covet after your neighbor's wife and house and all those other things. Love, real genuine love, keeps you from that kind of sin. Genuine love keeps you from that kind of torment in your life. And envy, if it goes unchecked, will control you. You'll never stop. And so when genuine love fills that void, it blocks the path of envy. You don't see a need to match up with the Joneses. I mean, for the Christian that is saved, what do you have to envy out there? You have the love of God. What do you have to envy? You're going to heaven. What do you have to envy? So when you have genuine love, that envy, it can't share space. It's like oil and water. Next part of that verse. Charity vaunteth not itself. When you really love people, you're not anxious to impress them. Sure, as a pastor, I always want to deliver a good sermon, and I want to move people, and I want to make an impact. But I'm not looking to impress people. I'm not looking to make everybody like me. God moves in mysterious ways, and He'll bring those things to pass when it's time. But fake love is always looking to make yourself better in the eyes of those around you. Why? Genuine love will make itself known. You don't have to make yourself liked. You don't have to adjust your life because other people need to see something in you that isn't there. When it's real, genuine love, it'll make the very impacts you need it to make. It doesn't seem to even still create an image. Images always fail. You take a painting and you throw enough water on it or enough another paint, whatever. That picture, that painting will fail. That's what happens when your charity is so busy vaunting itself up. And when you think about people that you've seen in the past, especially now with social media, it's easy. Look at what I've done. Let me videotape all the great that I've done. Are you really doing it because you cared about the person, or are you doing that because you want to make a name for yourself? So real, genuine charity doesn't care about who knows what you've done. Just the fact that you've done it. Next verse. It's not puffed up. So when we finish off verse 4, it is not puffed up. That kind of falls into a sense of vaunteth itself, but it does not cherish this idea of it's more special than something else. True, genuine love. It doesn't need an ego trip. It doesn't need a pat on the back. You love regardless of whether or not you get those things. It doesn't seem to be a self-centered position. When you love other people, you're far less concerned about yourself because you become more considerate, more caring, and more concerned about those around you rather than about yourself. And that keeps it in check. Ego can't, it's again oil and water, ego can't fill that void anymore. But now, excuse me, next verse, verse 5. Doth not behave itself unseemly. Genuine love has good manners. And in those good manners, it has respect for others. It has discretion and direction. It has discernment. Genuine love will treat everyone equally. It's not always looking to have your bread buttered. I know of people that Oh, I love you, brother. I love you, sister. I love you. Only when you're able to give them something. When you're not able to give them something anymore, then suddenly you don't hear from them for weeks or months at an end. That's not genuine love. Verse 5 continued. Seeketh not her own. So genuine love does not seek a selfish advancement, self-centeredness. Genuine love is a desiring concern for others, not for the individual. We're taught all the time now, I'm an individual. It's all about me. That's not what God's love says. What if Christ had felt that way on the cross? Well, it's just about me. Why am I bothering doing all this? No, it was about others. So now, next part of verse 5. It is not easily provoked. When you have genuine love, you're not easily touchy. Your skin doesn't get riled up at the slightest little incident or trouble or tribulation. You are able to be consistent and down to earth, as it likes to be called. It's not insensitive. So when you have genuine love, because you're not a self-centered person, because you're not looking to always build up your own ego and be puffed up about what you've done, and you're able to suffer long, you're not easily provoked when something doesn't go right. Somebody drops the ball, they don't make it the way you expected them to. It's okay. If you genuinely love them, you have this spirit of forgiveness that transcends all of those other things. So now continuing on, verse 5. Thinketh no evil. Now this one's interesting. This can be looked at and utilized, I believe, in two different ways. One, you don't think evil of another. And two, you don't keep account of their evil. And when we consider Judas Iscariot, I wonder how many times and how many thoughts throughout the ministry he was with Jesus where he thought, I love this guy. I told him, I love this. This is my brother. I love him to death. Literally. I wonder all those times, because obviously it wasn't genuine. He brought evil. But when we look at that, it thinketh no evil. How many times have we thought of someone and wished evil upon them? Or as a sick example, the basketball player who refused to kneel and said, I only kneel for Jesus, tears his tendon the next day, and the love of the world is great because they just cheer the fact that this kid broke his leg or whatever it is that he tore up. That's the world's love for you. They thought evil of him. Not only were they joyous in the evil that befell him, but they were excited in the fact that they could be a part of it and joy in that. There have been people in my life that have wronged me greatly. Every one of us have that same testimony. I don't wish them any harm. I don't wish them any evil whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I've prayed it many times in many lengths by name that God protects them from such. Because godly love looks beyond that. It looks deeper. And if your love's going to suffer and be patient, sometimes what we find is those that we thought were so evil really aren't. Misunderstood, misguided, bad situation, rough time, rough patch in their life. There's all kinds of things that bring those things into play. But now the next part of that. Verse 6, rejoiceth not in iniquity. We don't gloat or be excited about the wickedness of others. True love is not excited. That's why I said sometimes you have to have the friend that's willing to pull the Band-Aid off and cause you a little pain. Because that's real love. Putting a little bit of Neosporin over a wound that's never going to heal is not going to help you. It's not, that's done because people want to keep you at place and they want to make you feel okay today and they don't want to hurt your feelings. That's not love. God requires us to sometimes not be so nice when we love, but we don't rejoice in wicked. We don't look at the brother or sister and say, hey, I'm so glad you went to the heroin party. No, we don't do that. We don't rejoice in the sinfulness of sin, regardless of what's being said. Oh, everyone else is doing it. And? You know, my mom told me the old adage years ago, if everybody jumped off the bridge, would you? I can't imagine how many times that's been said through human history, but look at it today. People are jumping off the bridges by going and blocking traffic and throwing rocks through windows and looting businesses and whatever else they're doing, and people just join in without a second thought. Whether they agree with the mission or the mindset or whatever it is, they're jumping off the bridge without a second thought. My mom told me that because she wanted to protect me from evil, and she didn't want to rejoice in my iniquities. Next verse, finishing verse 6. But rejoiceth. So what does true love rejoice in? Rejoiceth in the truth. Well, I've defined much sense to you over the past few weeks that the truth is in God and God alone. Buy the truth and sell it not. I've preached on this many times because there is so much deception in our world right now, and it's just rampant. So continuing on for sake of time. Verse 7, bearing all things. You have no limits to what you'll tolerate. And I say that with a sense of this. When you truly love, you'll forbear a lot of the problems that a person has, and you'll still do it with empathy and concern for them. Yeah, you may have told them 1,000 times, don't do it. Tell the parent who has a child addicted to drugs, tell them, just give up on your child. See how quickly they're able to do that. When you have true, genuine love, it will deal with a lot of trouble. And repeated trouble. Things that you have warned against for 100 hours in straight, and they still do it. You still love them. Continuing on, verse 7. Believeth all things. So when you believeth all things, that's followed by bearing. You will hold fast. But when you believeth, true love has no limits to trust. Now, we understand people are sinners. We understand that people make mistakes. But we also understand as Christians that God can change that and turn things around. So when you trust someone through charity, through true love, you trust them wholeheartedly. And I've heard this, well, they did this once and I can't ever trust them again. Okay. What about the mistakes you've made? Personal accountability. Remember, don't be puffed up. What about the failures in your own life? The faults that you've made? And so now when we see this beareth all things, and you will tolerate a lot of trouble and trials, that leads you into believing all things. You trust them. Trust them to do what's right, especially if you've spent time teaching and loving and having compassion on them. And if you feel like you can't trust them, then be more in their life. Get more involved in what they're doing. Get more involved in what they're facing. Get more involved in them so you can find that ability to trust. Because true love, it trusts. And I understand that's hard. When you deal with someone who lies and cheats and manipulates and steals and all of these other things, I understand that. But the truth is still the truth. Verse 7. Hopeth all things. When you hopeth all things, you're not fickle. Every parent that has a drug-addicted child has hope that they'll get their life cleaned up. When you can bear, and you can beareth all things, you can live through the trouble and the trials, and you can trust them, then you will find yourself hoping in all things in their life. I have hope in a lot of people that have failed me throughout my life, because I've failed them and they still had hope in me. I worked hard to make things right or adjust things the way that I should. To be a better person, a better friend, better father, better son, better husband, all of those things. Because I want them to hope and trust and forbear when I do mess up. And when I, when I do make mistakes, because it's inevitable that we will. But I want to get to the last part of this verse, verse 7. Endureth all things. True love can outlast anything when it's true. When it's God's love in us, it can outlast anything. Many failures, many faults, many slip-ups and stumbling blocks and mistakes, many sins, many failures. That genuine love will hold fast. See, the Titanic, and I like the Titanic, the story of it, the Titanic going through that water, there's all kinds of ideas now how that boat sank. SOS, the side of it, it tore big holes. I mean, there's thousands of ideas of why it failed. And one of the most prevalent is that it had faulty bolts, rivets at the bottom of the boat. So when that iceberg hit and it ran across that iceberg, those rivets popped. And those rivets popping opened up the caverns, which allowed those tanks to fill, and they could not get them closed fast enough, which brought that boat down. Many times, our love is like the Titanic. We build it up in our own minds to be this great and wonderful and magnificent edifice of love. This is just, nobody can beat my love. I love better than anyone else. And you get out there in the water, and that water is filled with people that struggle, people that give you grief, people that will judge you and criticize you, people that have a lot of trouble in their lives. And you mosey on along, and you mosey on along, and you think you're still floating on top because your love is just so great and so wonderful, and it just transcends everything else. But somewhere along the line, you get like that mixed up kid and you omit God at the end. And that's when the iceberg hits you. The iceberg called God. Here, I've given you a direction on how to love. And now abideth faith, Godward. Hope, God and manward. Charity, manward. Now I'm giving my little synopsis for this message. But you got God first, God showing you how to deal with man, and then how you should deal with man. Faith, hope, and charity. The aspects and attributes of love are nestled so greatly in 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8. Finishing 8, charity never faileth, but whether there be prophecies, they shall fail. People fail. Stories fail. Whether there be tongues, your verbiage, your speech, your whatever, it can fail. Whether there be knowledge, your knowledge will vanish away. So when that Titanic's going through the water, and it's gotten so cocky and so arrogant, it just thinks it's got the greatest love that has ever been given to man. And it hits God. And God says, I taught you how to be kind, to suffer long, to envy not, to don't puff yourself up, behave yourself, don't be unseemly, to do all of these things that I've just listed out. Yet you got so reliant on, as verse 8 tells us, prophecies, tongues, and knowledge, your charity left you. And much like the Titanic, your love will sink. It'll sink under the weight of its own puffed up ego. So my question to you as I close this message, when we look at that 4-letter word, love, I want to put 2 more words together for you. The and dare. It's called the love dare. Now I know there's a devotion somewhere about it. I'm not sure of all the details to it, but I've heard of it. I thought that's an interesting 2 4-letter words put together, love and dare. I'm daring you. Do you know God's love? Do you live the example of God's love? So my dare goes in this order. I dare you to find it. Hunt for it. If you don't know that you grasp on to the kind of love God has, gives, and provided for you to have and to give, then go out and find it. Get in this book. Read about it. Read about the fact that he sacrificed himself, because no greater love than this, that you'll lay your life down for your friends. We can't even get people to love each other enough to call and say, hey, how you doing? We can't get people to love each other enough to genuinely pray for them. Oh, yeah, I'll pray for you. Okay, you're good. How much time have we as Christians spent praying for not just our country and our president, but for just the person down the street? Who knows what they're going through? But then once you find it, I'm daring you to live it. Live that example. Show the world you and your love, that it can endure things that they could never imagine, that it can face things that it can never be, that would have never been faced otherwise, and the fact that you won't puff yourself up about it. Hey, look at me, I donated to the poor. Hey, look at me, I fed the poor, and this and this and this. Who cares? Do you love them? Then I want you to sow it. I'm daring you to sow that kind of love. Invest in the people around you, that they'll love the way that you do. Not in the sin way, not in the lusty way, but in the way of the Lord. So charity. There's 3 examples, and this is my closing. Our charity, love, must first be to God. And sadly, many of us fall into this kind of little idiom. A little girl's got her little baby doll, and she's squeezing it, and she's squeezing it, and she's loving it, and she's squeezing it. And she looks at that baby doll, and there's no expression change on the face. There's no reaching back to touch her. There's no communication between her and the baby. And she looks it up, and she says, Mommy, I love these babies so much, but they'll never love me back. I wonder, does God love you so much that he's squeezing you, he's hugging you, and he's holding on to you, but you'll never love him back? Then I love this quote by Lucian. Lucian was a man, he was a Greek writer and unbelieving. Here's what he said. And this is AD 120 to 200. He observed some fellowship of Christians. So this is first your love to God. Do you love him, or do you love him like the baby doll? Now your love to man. He said this: it is incredible to see the fervor with which people of that religion, speaking of Christians, help each other in their wants. They spare nothing. Their first legislature, Jesus, has put it into their heads that they are brethren. Wasn't that interesting? A lost man could not see why it is that Christians will sacrifice for one another, that we care so much about each other. But the last one, I challenge you on your love to God, and I challenge you on your love to man, but now I'm challenging you on your love to everything. Is it unconditional? We as humans place so much condition on the things that we do and say. We place conditions on those around us. Well, if they don't do as I think they should, well, then they failed. Really? So when we consider love, I want you to consider this. There's a story of a young set of boys. Their dad bought them a dog. That was a pretty dog. But these boys, they struggle with understanding things, and they struggle with behaving themselves. And sadly, they treated this dog with great disrespect. They threw sticks and stones at it. They punched it. They kicked it. They did all these horrible things to this dog. But the dog loved them. And every time these boys would come running up, that dog's tail would be just a whipping and whapping, and it would be excited and be panting around and hopping, just ready and excited to see him. Even though it went through terrible suffering the day before. That dog's love was unconditional. And if you got a dog, you know what I'm talking about. Isn't that how Jesus does with us? We fail him, we mock him, we criticize him. He was punched physically, he was hit with sticks and stabbed and crucified, and He suffered greatly. Do you see any conditions in his love? It's either my way or the highway. It was unconditional. So I want to end this message with this. I dare you to be unconditionally loving to both God and man. Take that four-letter word and run with it. And so much hate and rage and anger and everything else we see today, what a bright shining light it would be to have some love. But follow this platitude, follow this little description that you've been given out of 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8. God's example is direct, and hold on to them. We'll close in prayer. Father, we thank you, Lord, for this message. I thank you for allowing me to deliver it. Lord, I ask that you please bless those that hear it, guide them, lead them, give them wisdom and understanding. And we thank you, Lord, for all that you've done and given. In your Son's holy name we ask and we pray. Amen. You guys are dismissed. Have a wonderful day.